Eileen, I cannot tell you to do what I just told Sam to do in his house. I can't say, Sam, we went through all of this and this is great, all of these things that you came up with, let's do this in your house. And then I go over to Eileen, do this, here's this list. Do this stuff in your house. No, absolutely not. A self-disciplined leader understands that they can learn from Sam because the relationship with Sam just helped to grow their social and cultural capital. So they may have new tools in their toolbox, but they still need to go here and then ask about the conditions and the concerns and the things that are going on. And for goodness sakes, if they learn from Sam, they can utilize those things. But Sam's life can't dictate what we do for you. Because a self-disciplined leader understands that we are all different. Do you remember that? I told you to look beside you. Look at the person beside you and see that everybody is in fact different. There are things about us that are the same, and we can take some of those things and learn, but I am not my gender. I am not my race. I am Shaquita Howard Bostic. And so what I need is based upon our interactions, based upon the condition, based upon my built environment, based upon my skills, based upon my knowledge, based upon my network, and everything that you do for me will be related to those things that are a part of this process that we're discussing today. But you think a one-trick pony will work for you? It'll lead you to a dry river. Next, self-development. Leaders must learn and understand their own biases. Man. So I guess now that we know each other a little bit, I did say my entire name just a few seconds ago, so that makes us officially known to each other, kind of. Right? I will say that usually after about the 5th sociology class, I might throw this bomb out. And the bomb is this. We're all prejudiced. That's so tough. Nobody wants to hear that, do they? This is such a nasty word. Isn't it a nasty word? Prejudice. Ew. Bias was fine. You're like, bias? Okay, I can deal with that. But you throw out that nasty prejudice word, and then some other choice words start coming along, and we don't want to be aligned with those things. Not at all, we don't. But the reality is that if, in fact, we are all very different, right? If we all have something about ourselves that make us distinct and make us unique, then that means that you're going to think a certain number of things are great and another number of things aren't so great. And that's going to be truly how you feel on the inside. Because from the day that you were born, the people around you socialized you, just like we socialized that built environment. They socialized you to think and feel and understand the world in a certain way. And so what I need us to do is to be okay with our bias and prejudice, but to learn how to treat people and interact in that space. Because everybody thinks something is good or bad, but that doesn't mean you have to treat people like they're no good. I think certain hair colors are more attractive than others, but I'm not going to go to Betty and say, your hair looks stupid, Betty. I hate red hair. It's dumb. You should never get red hair, Betty. You look like a fool, like a cockroach. I mean, just making up something random. A cockroach with red hair. That's what you look like. You don't go to Betty and say these nasty things because you don't like red hair, but you just shut up. Don't you? You say to yourself, well, maybe she shouldn't have done that. But you don't go to her and disrespect her and devalue her presence and her existence because you don't like it. The reality, again, at the end of the day, is that we have to take the time to understand our biases, which then can possibly result in being prejudiced, which is treating people in a way that doesn't fully allow them to be harmonious because of those particular biases. And we all have done this before. There is not a person in this room who hasn't exercised a prejudice as a result of a bias that they were taught. Does this make us bad people? Absolutely not. But it can make you a bad disciplined leader if you don't understand the root of your prejudices that, when under pressure, allow you to cut a fool in a space. And don't we do it sometimes when things are just too tough. And that filter that we thought we had just disappeared out of nowhere. Where was that filter? Oh my goodness. I should have changed that filter last week, because maybe in the meeting, I should have paid $2.99 for that new filter at Walmart, right? Because in the middle of this meeting, I just showed myself. I showed my prejudice because I was under so much pressure that I couldn't stop myself from exercising my biases. But if I take the time to better understand myself, through self-development, you understand, then maybe I can catch myself before I talk about Betty's red hair in public, in front of her, and make her feel that gaze. Remember that gaze? Because now, not only have you looked at Betty in a disrespectful way, but you have also let Betty know that something about her is not as good as something about you. And Betty will never, ever forget that. Betty will never forget that. Betty will hold that to your death. You'll be laying there on your deathbed. She said I had ugly red hair. I remember that. And every time Betty goes to get her hair color, she'll say, make sure you have less of a tint of red, because someone once called me a red cockroach, even though it doesn't make any sense. But she'll remember that forever, and you'll own that forever, even though you'll forget. That moment that you say that nasty thing about Betty, it'll probably go in one of your ears and out the other, because it meant nothing, because it was so connected to that prejudice or bias that you have that is natural and normal and something that you don't think twice about because your parents taught you this. You learned it by watching television. You learned this in the interactions within your social network. You learned this bias, and it's been perpetuated because no one has ever told you, stop it. Don't say that. So we have to understand our biases if we want to be self-disciplined leaders, because we can make a mistake and trip ourselves. How do we trip ourselves? By not understanding who we are and what makes sense to us. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of your prejudice or biases. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to walk right into that knowledge and understand these are the things that my grandfather taught me, and he's dead wrong. But you know what? That's so infused in the way I think about things that I can't help to frown at that person at Walmart. I can't help it, because it's been embedded in so many things that I do. But if I know this, then I can check myself before I hurt another person. And so this is why I say it's okay to acknowledge prejudice. It's okay to acknowledge it, because we are also very different, and there is nothing that we can do to change that we have different opinions about what is good and what is bad. We live in a society that has told us that we all have to think the same, that we have to fall into some type of melting pot ideology of living in this perfect world and believing that everything, you have to pretend and say that, and act like everything is great. You can on the inside, you can acknowledge how you really feel. And you know what? If there's a problem with some of those things, if you find that some of those things are problematic, then you can actually engage in knowledge building and put yourself in positions or meet different people to help you transform or change, work toward changing some of those views, or give yourself some positive things to think about people that you've been taught to believe negative things about. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like the idea that we have to walk in this world and pretend to love everything is very scary. That's a lot of pressure for a self-disciplined leader. Self-disciplined leaders are human beings. You are a person. You are a human being. You aren't invincible. You have the right to think things, to understand things, to have feelings. You have the right to do that. You have a right to believe something is good or bad. But you also have the responsibility of engaging people responsibly and effectively. So it is okay to not think something is amazing, but it is not okay to make somebody believe they are not amazing. You can help people to grow, but you don't have to stomp someone into the ground. Do you understand what that means when I'm talking about realized and maximized development? That is understanding what you can do better at and acknowledging when there's something about you that is just who you are. And you got to try to work with it. Last, time management. So I talked about this a little bit before, and the main idea here is that you must take note of what you can do and what you cannot do. And so oftentimes somebody will say, oh, Sharita, do you think you can do this? And I'll say in my head, nope. And then out loud I'll say, sure. And at that point, I'm not being a self-disciplined leader. Because I know I don't have time to do this. But I'm thinking about, oh, if I do that, then that would help with this project, and that would sure help Tracy and Stacy and Lisa and Khalid and all of these other people. But I know darn well I should have looked at that person and said, you know what, this is not a good time. Maybe we can think about a smaller version of this idea, or maybe I can contact Elizabeth or Sam, and maybe they have some way that we can actually do this. But for me to put this on my plate right now would be a disservice to the people in my social network. It would be a disservice because I have so much on my plate and I can't actually handle this right now. And so I'm a human being, I'm not perfect, and I struggle with time management in terms of putting things on my plate that there's not enough time sometimes to do. Now, I make it happen, I get it done. But when you get it done sometimes, you sacrifice your self-care, your health, your wellness, your sleep. So you sacrifice yourself in order to create a better built environment. And based upon this model of self-disciplined leadership, that's a no-no. Because if you can't be present, if you can't be there, if you can't fully be yourself, then how will those goals that we talked about from leadership, how will those things trickle down to the people who are watching and following you? How will there be a mutual exchange then of those things if you are not taking care of yourself? So I'm not saying that you say no, because we talked about this idea of bridging and building and linking and bonding with other people, some people who do things better than you do, and some people who do not. And we create opportunities. So you should be searching for people who do what you do. Search for those people who do the things that you do. So that when you can't do it, there's somebody else who can step in and then make that happen. So understand not only the circumstances that you have, but understand the conditions that exist for your social network so that you all can work together. Because sometimes you can't do it. And you have to know that. Like sometimes I can't do it. Next slide. Okay. All right. So there's an image on the back of your paper. The big paper, the one page. And there are photographs. And so if you would like, you can see these photographs. If your body won't let you see the photographs, then you won't. It'll just be a circle with a bunch of stuff in the middle of it. So we'll think about that. What will you allow yourself to see? And that will determine for today in this exercise your cultural sensitivity. So what will you allow yourself to see in this picture? I see a little Asian girl with a brain tumor. I see a senior citizen who is African American with diabetes. I see a Palestinian executive with high cholesterol. I see a Hispanic man suffering from migraine headaches. I see a Peruvian woman with stage 4 breast cancer who gave birth to a newborn son. I see a middle-aged Nigerian woman with lung cancer. I see a 7-year-old undocumented foreign national who was recently diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia. I see a mixed-race young girl with the chronic nosebleeds and parents who are diagnosed with AIDS, among many other faces. I see these things. You should too, as a self-disciplined leader. And the key here is that they are all individuals who deserve healthy, non-incriminating, comfortable care because they are not that object or that chair over there just because of their backgrounds or their circumstances. They should not be treated like they are nothing. Your community assets are the patients. Your community assets are the stakeholders. They're construction workers who build ventilation systems and remove asbestos. You may think that as a physician or as a care worker or as a spiritual leader, that you may not need to bridge a relationship with a construction worker who removes asbestos. But your patients may need this particular person in order to bridge the network. And so you constantly look at the community that you're in and you say, who are all of the different stakeholders in this community? And you learn your community so that you can do resource building and exchange and think about the things that can help and serve. Because once you are connected to someone in your social network, then their network becomes your network. And so on and so forth. So you actually become more powerful as a self-disciplined leader when you bridge the network of stakeholders that you have. You can provide more support for the people who are part of that particular network through the same leadership skills that we talked about. Next slide. And that's what we're talking about. Bridging, linking, and bonding. Remember that? Building, linking, bridging, linking, and bonding. And I'm talking about grassroots support. I'm talking about participation. I'm talking about inspiration, reverence, teaching transcendence. That means that you are going to teach someone how they've risen above somebody else or above something. Acknowledge that. Because you may think that just because someone doesn't have a college degree that perhaps they're not successful. Success is different. It's based upon where you start and then where you have to go. And some people are so busy using this trajectory that is created in society to determine whether somebody is successful or not. Maybe you should be thinking about where people start and then where they need to go. And that can help you to empower people. Now, there's some things I want you to think about with bonding. Think about it. Have you done this? Have you gone through the labyrinth? Have you walked through the labyrinth? Maybe we can do that together. What about meditation or mindfulness activities? What about music therapy? What about a common read? And it could be a children's novel. It doesn't have to be a sophisticated book. Giving forward initiatives. So how do you take something that you didn't need and give it to someone who would really need whatever that is? Have you gone through your basement or your storage area and figured out what you don't need and then thought about a friend or someone who could use that? You're never going to use it again. Give it away to someone who can use it. What about positive words? Do you think about this? Do you think about the words that you use today? Have you said something positive to somebody? Please do not go to bed any day without saying something positive to somebody. So if you've been an idiot the whole day, before you go to bed, make a phone call. Say something positive to somebody. Do something positive every day. And we do have bad days, and that is okay. Creative expressions. What about crafts or painting? What do we do to show our creativity? Just maybe in the clothing that we wear. Everybody, let's wear red today. Let's wear blue. Let's wear a funny tie. Let's do something alike. Let's try to walk down the same path today and bring each other together. So these things matter. And my last slide. Cultural capital. So this is it for us. We know that at the end of the day, we've learned about this leadership model and about this theory, right? We know that our goal is to improve the quality of our environment because we want to increase positive change orientation. So we want to feel better about the things that are in the room, about how we respond to those things, how we respond to people, how people respond to us. We want to make a difference. We want to enrich safety, and we talked about that. I talked to you about different things that you can do to make the environment more safe, stakeholders that you can connect and align with. When you see a problem, who can you talk to try to solve this problem? You know what your patient's needs are because you've invested time and energy in that. You know what the people need who are near you because you understand the conditions. Now let's look in that social network and let's see what it is that we can do to try to provide support and to create a space that is more safe for them. And then last, humanizing the space. We know about healing gardens, right? Healing gardens are very interesting to me. It doesn't have to be like a community garden or a plant. It can be giving someone a cough drop. It could be giving somebody a package of tissue. It can be any type of social interaction where you engage in creativity. to help somebody feel more comfortable or to help them feel healthier. So when you're talking about humanizing a space, you're allowing other people to be present. You're allowing them to be a human being. You're allowing them to be fully themselves. And that's so important. So I'll just put these last words up here for you to just marinate. I combine social and cultural capital into these metrics because I think you understand the relationship between the network that you have and then the knowledge that you gain from those people, yeah? And we know that sustainability was our goal. We want harmony. We want our leaders to be self-disciplined, but we understand that we can't do it alone. Sometimes we need to reach out. We need to share those relationships with other people. We need to make sure that we have compassion and we address pathology. We need to have change orientation because we need to try to make a difference because that matters. And we can do that just simply by looking at people with a smile or respectfully or by not commenting when it's unnecessary to do so. Understanding and exercising our privilege. We have privileges and we know we do, but we don't take the time sometimes to know what that means. And sometimes just your ability to look down at somebody, that is a privilege because it means something and you can impact people. And then our healthy built environment, they require leadership, sustainable relationships, and grassroots action. And that's what I have for you.
We'll see if we can squeeze in a couple of questions. Yes. Bruce.
With the social, religious, political, gender, race issues of America, what you're sharing today is foundational, isn't it? That no matter what my politics is, my race, my religion, my creed, as chaplains in a hospital setting, are these things you're bringing affect the chaplain's perception of the patient and family? Do they?
So as we developed, my team, my research team, as we developed this particular theory, we looked at so many different types of research. We looked at community gardens, we looked at spiritual health, we looked at health and wellness centers, we looked at urban planning work, we looked at building and constructing, we looked at research on race, class, and gender, racism, sexism, we looked at politics, we looked at economic development, and we put all of these different ideas together because they affect this circle. And the circle is social, emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical health. So if you're a self-disciplined leader and you look at this particular circle and you embrace this circle, then you will interact with every challenge and problem that exists in society. You don't miss anything because everything that happens, if there's a balance between those elements of the circle, if you can help people find that balance in some type of way, or at least address some issue within that, you can help them to become a healthier person. But in order to do that, you got to set aside those biases and such and say, I'm going to engage this person not as a chair, And I think it'll help with anything. Defining your leadership model is so important. And this is not the only leadership model. There's so many different leadership models. I've been presented about multicultural leadership or transformational leadership, different types of leadership. But this one in particular, I think is special. Because there's something unique. When I studied urban planning at the University of Buffalo, I remember Uta Lira, a professor, she said, never forget that what happens in one space will always affect the space beside it. And so you may think that you're living in your own world, swimming along in a river far, far away from everybody with all your agendas and all the things that you're doing. You may think it's all great, it's all about you. But everything that you do actually impacts someone who's beside you, and then what they do impacts the person beside them. So a responsible leader has to understand that the built environment and social relationships, all of those things, that you have a rippling effect on other people. So you're not living in the world alone. Even if you think you're alone, you're not living in the world alone. So I think this theory is just really interesting, and combining urban planning with sociology is just extremely powerful in terms of understanding healthy space and how we as individuals build and define that space, and how you make other people feel comfortable and accepted, you know, within that particular space.
Thank you very much, Dr.
I would